Back again. I said this show was going to be 2 parts. I was wrong. It is 3 parts. I'm Ryan Thomas. You're tuning into the Thomas Takes Sports Podcast live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and last but not least, Grandstand Sports Network. Coming to you live from One Buffalo, New York, and we got some big fights this weekend tonight. Bellator MMA, the second fight of the World Grand Prix quarterfinals. Roy Big Country Nelson versus Matt Mitrione. I'm going to be tuning into that, getting my popcorn ready, getting some, beer on ice, and I'm going to tune into that, safe to say. And then obviously this Sunday, you have Donald Cowboy Cerrone. Donald Cowboy Cerrone, as I alluded to earlier in the show with Frankie Edgar, is a true throwback fighter. But why do I believe it's a central lock that Cerrone will win? And I'm not taking anything from Yancy Medeiros. Nancy Medeiros is a... Yancy... Did I call him Nancy? Yancy Medeiros is a tough SOB. He's one of my favorite up-and-coming fighters. I listed him in my top 10 up-and-coming fighters on my Fantasy Sports Talk, and I think that he will come prepared. I don't take anything away from him in that regard, but I do think Donald Cerrone is going to win this fight. But there's a reason why, an outlying reason, as there always is with my show. There's a reason why I believe Donald Cerrone will win this fight on Sunday. And the reason is Donald Cerrone wins fights that might not be on the biggest stage. He always beats the guys that he's supposed to beat, and he loses emphatically in high-pressure situations. This technically, I wouldn't classify as a high-pressure situation. I would classify it as, a fight that he should win, a fight that he needs to win, a fight that he should win, and a fight that I think will definitely be a barn burner. Yancy Medeiros is going to bring it. Cerrone is going to bring it. But over the course of his career, there is no, let's just say, I'm not wrong in saying that he loses big fights. He just does. I don't know if it is a mental block. I don't know if it is a issue in terms of the opponents. Obviously, when you're in a big fight, you're fighting somebody that's tough. So it's not like he's not fighting anyone that's tough, but he loses big fights. And I can go back to the beginning of his career, which I'm in the process of looking this up, so just bear with me. Go back to the beginning of his career. Cerrone's 32-10 professionally. He's got 16 wins by submission, 8 wins by knockout, but he's got 10 losses. 4 losses by knockout, 1 by submission, and 5 by decision. He's lost his last 3 fights back-to-back. Jorge Masvidal, TKO. It was a drubbing. Robbie Lawler, a decision that I actually thought he won that fight. Darren Till completely annihilated Donald Cerrone. But you go back to that, he had 4 straight wins. He had a knockout loss to Rafael dos Anjos, which was for the UFC lightweight title. And prior to that, he went on a run of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 straight wins before his title shot. Prior to those 8 straight wins, his last loss was to Rafael dos Anjos. So there's definite facts here that the big fights, once he fights the elite of the elite, he more oftentimes than not loses. He fights Rafael dos Anjos, loses. He fights Evan Dunham, Adriano Martins, Barboza, who he submitted, Jim Miller, Eddie Alvarez. I'm not saying that Donald Cerrone hasn't beaten some tough guys. Obviously he has. But when there's something on the line, he seems to lose. Whereas this time, although he is coming off 3 losses, although he's the A side still of this fight, I truly believe that the pressure is on the other guy, Yancy Medeiros, who is finally facing a true step up in competition. It's almost as if Donald Cerrone is the outlier of the title challengers, or of the title holder, him, and then the title challengers. He's like the B. He's staying constant as a B in between the A and the C, which is fine. He's definitely a Hall of Famer. He's one of the best, fighters of his generation. But the big fights he seems to lose, which is why I think this is going to be a fight that he wins. This is going to be a fight where he comes out guns blazing, swinging, ready to perform at a high level, and ready to contribute another win to his 32 wins in his career. I really think Donald Cerrone is one of the few cases where you can look at his career and say to yourself, I think he should have a sports psychiatrist, a sports therapist, whatever you want to call it. He should have someone that he talks to and say and tell that person, hey, I am having some sort of a mental block. I don't know what it is. I don't know why, but it seems as if every time I fight someone that might be that step up for me, I can't get over that hump. Obviously, he lost to Rafael dos Anjos twice. Rafael dos Anjos is now a lightweight. I need to add is now a welterweight. I need to add as well that Cerrone moved up to welterweight to try a new lease on life, and that obviously didn't work out. Now he is back. He is back on the 155-pound train. So I think that there's definite reason to believe that he should win this fight. I think that there's a lot of reason to believe that if he wins this fight, he's still fighting at welterweight. I don't know why I said that. He was considering going back to lightweight. He's still fighting at welterweight. The Medeiros fight is a welterweight fight. I think there's a lot of reason to buy into what I'm saying, though. Am I wrong in saying that Donald Cerrone loses the big fights? I'm not. Am I right to say that he wins the fights that the other fighter, the fighter that he's fighting, is trying to get past that tier of competition, which usually Cerrone features himself in? Yes, I am completely right in saying that. UFC Fight Night 126, February 18th, Frank Irwin Center in Austin, Texas. Derek Lewis versus Tybura. That is going to be a barn burner of a heavyweight slobber knocker. Tanya Evinger expected to face Marion. Oh no, she got pulled out. She pulled out of that. My bad. Sarah McMahon is taking on Marion Renault. That is a good fight. That is going to be fun. Let's see the rest of the card. That fight was moved to a week later. Wow, they really changed this card around a lot. Donald Cerrone versus Yancy Medeiros at welterweight. Derek Lewis versus Marcin Tybura at heavyweight. James Vick versus Francisco Trinaldo at lightweight. Trinaldo has rattled off a few wins. Thiago Alves versus Curtis Melander. Alves obviously brings it. Sage Northcutt versus Thibaut Goody. And that's really about it. Josh Berkman back in the UFC. That dude's been around a long time. But oh boy, I mean, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, whatever. I really don't care when I'm wrong. I don't really care when I'm right. I do this for the fun of it. I do this for, my career and my future. And I do this to entertain. And I really think that there's credence to what I'm saying. Donald Cerrone loses the big fights. He can't seem to get out of that B tier level. And the Darren Till fight showed the weaknesses in Donald Cerrone's game that have been weaknesses for years. Holds his hands low, holds his chin up high, fights stiff as a board, and even I remember Conor McGregor made that reference saying he was stiff as a board. He is stiff as a board. He fights straight. Doesn't have any bend to his movement. Kind of holds his hands up and fights kind of tall, which isn't really a good strategy for him because he's not tall. So the Darren Till fight, a guy that's rangier, a guy that's elusive, a guy that bobs and weaves and moves loose in his legs, that fighter is going to completely dispatch Donald Cerrone, and that's what happened. So Yancy Medeiros is a guy that fights straight up. He fights toe-to-toe. Donald Cerrone, that's where he makes his money. That's where his bread and butter is. So I think he'll win this fight. I'm going to go with Derek Lewis in the co-main event. Let's look at some of the other fights on the card. So other fights on the card, James Vick. I think James Vick is the real deal. He definitely deserves more of an opportunity to fight someone with more name recognition. Thiago Alves, I'm going to go with him, and I'm going to go with Sage in his fight. So there you have it. I think Donald Cerrone will win this fight due to the fact that he only loses the big ones. I'm Ryan Thomas. Take care.